All right. Hi, everyone. Sid and ask Josh. Great. Well, as we start entering the room and just want to wait, I'd love for you guys to put in the chat, if you can, where you're calling in from and what the weather is like there today, where you are right now. California and cloudy. Yeah. I am in Australia, actually in Perth, Western Australia. And it is very, very sunny this morning. All right. Snowing in Ontario. Cool. I have to say, I could use a little bit of Christmas snow. Oh, cool. Awesome. Not a lot of folks know what Perth is. Apparently, it's the most isolated city in the world. So, and by isolated, I mean there's a lot going on here, but then it takes 4 or 5 hours on a flight to get anywhere else. So, all right. So, Akira, Lyman, Trevor. All right. For those of you just joining, we're just putting in the chat where you're calling in from and what the weather is like where you are. While folks get on audio. Cool. Awesome. And if you can uh, come off, or sorry, share your video. Would love to see some faces, just because it helps as the presenter to see kind of how things are landing. I totally understand if you're in a situation where you can't be on video, but if you have that opportunity, would love to see that. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've waited a few minutes, so let's just get started. So just wanted to introduce myself. So welcome everybody to creating a values aligned career path. So my name is Tracy and I'm a coach here with Leland. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about me. So that's me here. So I am a CPCC and I hold an associate certified coach certificate with the ICF. I've been running my own coaching business for the past 8 years, but my past experience has been in tech. So I worked for a company called Strava, and I have also worked in the HR function and learning and development. Prior to that, worked at a lot of nonprofits, and then have worked as a consultant and an HR business partner before I moved to Europe. So I've lived in 5 different countries, in the Czech Republic, in Ireland, in France, and now in Australia. And of course, in the US, I'm originally from San Francisco in California. And these are all the different jobs I've taken. But before you look at my jobs, I just kind of wanted to start, because we're talking about values, with some of my top 5 values. So those are curiosity, kindness, integrity, creativity, and challenge. So those are some values that I know are really important to me, and it really helps to know my values because it helps with a lot of decision making that I have. So as to go on a little bit about my career path. So some careers or some jobs I've held are head of learning and development, as a ceramics instructor, an HR business partner, a lead rock climbing guide, a team building facilitator, and a Girl Scout recruiter. So lots of different careers. And the reason why this might be important is that I'm sure many of you know that this is a little bit more about what careers look like today. So you start out, you might have this idea, you're going to get yourself way up the career ladder, but instead of looking at that ladder, we actually are looking at a kind of roller coaster of stuff, right? Because life happens and no longer are careers just climbing this ladder. They might look a little bit more bumpy. So you might start your first job, then there's a round of layoffs, the economy changes, you might decide you don't like that job. Maybe you go back to school and get your MBA. Maybe you become viral on TikTok. Maybe you decide to have a family. Maybe you get burnt out. Throughout all of these things, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. What matters is you and how you're kind of adjusting your life to align with what's really going to fulfill you so that you can always make a career pivot. You can always figure out what's important and you can really go back to the core of what makes you work. So, our objectives for today are to understand the importance of values in career decision making. So, hopefully, by the end of today's workshop, you'll kind of understand how your values can help guide any of the career decisions you're making. You'll identify your own values. So, we'll have a chance to do that in a little bit. And then you'll choose one actionable step to align a career decision with a value. And the goal is that we actually use everyone here as your fellow accountability partners, or you can definitely use me as a coach to really make just one tiny, tiny change in could be anything, could be your life, could be maybe a job you're applying to, it could be a conversation you're having with your boss, so that you can start living and changing your career to the way you value things and how you decide to move forward. So, what are our values? We hear this tossed around all the time, but values can be pretty broad. In general, they're the core principles and beliefs that guide our actions and decisions. So, for example, if I have a big value of challenge, right? So, I like to be challenged a lot, that might look a couple different ways. It might be that the way I get challenged is by engaging with really higher level folks who are constantly giving me feedback and challenging my own leadership decisions. Or it might be that challenge shows up in doing triathlon. I decide that's not a career thing I want to do, but I want to create time for doing challenging things in my own personal life. So these are all kind of the core principles that guide you. But I know we've probably all heard a lot of different values. So I would like to just first share with you some top values and hear a little bit from you about what your top values might be. So I'm going to toss a link in the chat here. And this is a list of 50 plus values. And I'd love for you to take a minute and open that link and give us two of your top values. You can add those into the chat. Now, of course, these values aren't all encompassing. So if there's a value you like your two values, right off the hand, please just put them in the chat. Even if they're not on the list, just wanted to give you guys some ideas. Contribution, knowledge, great. Authenticity for sure. Yeah. What else? Yeah, integrity, curiosity, and challenge. I'm with you, Josh. Those are two of mine. Yeah. Amber's got a few too. Adventure, achievement, authenticity, integrity. Definitely. And you might notice, like you're looking at this list of values, that you might resonate with 20 or 30 of them, right? And that's pretty common, right? There are a lot of these values are things that ways we would aspire to live our life. And just because you might have a top value of achievement, doesn't mean that you don't also value kindness. It might also be just a little bit down the road. So the goal here is for us to kind of go through the noise, and you might be tempted. I know a lot of people are to like circle 20 values. And then what we can do is kind of group them together. Like, okay, maybe, friendship and kindness and connection all go together. So that's kind of one little value strand that that all works together. So see you, Trevor. So what we'll do is essentially kind of get some ideas of these values and then group them together. So you have a few top ones to guide yourself by, but you can always change some of your top values. So Thanks for participating. I think we got some good values there. And one way where we can really look at our values a little bit more is by going through a few activities. So, a lot of times with my coaching clients, we start with values mining because it's really going to give us a good idea of where you are right now in living the life and creating the career that you really want. So you might, do that just by saying my values are kindness and integrity. But maybe what's really a value that's there is curiosity, and you might not be honoring that, but it's been so far away from when you were curious that it's hard for you to think of to come top of mind. So we're going to just take a second, and I know we're all off video for now. So I would like you to just take a minute, and we're going to go through a short visualization. And if you have something to jot down notes, that would be great, because I want you to remember what comes up during this visualization. And after that, we're actually going to take about 15 minutes in breakout rooms and kind of go through this to break down some of your top values. So get into a comfortable position where you are. And I'd love for you to just kind of relax, take a deep breath, close your eyes a little bit. And I want you to think about a time when you were in complete flow, a time when you were really at your best. So maybe you were operating at your highest level, but there was a sense of ease here. It can be any moment. It can be anything that happened in your life. It can be any work moment, any social moment. But whatever's happening, you're really at this peak in your life. Everything is flowing. There's this ease and you're in the zone. So think about for a second what was happening. What's around you? Who are the people involved in this? And what's the atmosphere that's created? Great. So for now, we're going to just take that peak experience. And I'd love if we have a volunteer, if you can raise your hand. And we are going to I'm gonna do a little bit of an example of the coaching. We're actually going to do some group coaching in a second. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that peak experience and see if I can hear some of the values that come out through that peak experience. So any volunteers? Anybody? And if for some reason for Zoom you can't raise your hand, just let me know in the chat and I can ask you to unmute. Ah, Josh, I think you're oh, never mind. Okay. Well, if we don't have any volunteers, I promise I don't bite. We'll just go straight into the breakout room, but I want to explain a little bit about what we'll be doing once we get there. So the goal is for you to share your peak experience. So there are about 8 of us attending right now. So we'll be in 2 different breakout rooms. So instead of groups of 3, it'll be groups of 4. You'll share your peak experience, and then everyone else is going to listen carefully for what values are expressed. So, for example, I'll give you one of my peak experiences. So, about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I was in Thailand with one of my best friends, and we had gotten on a kayak and we were kayaking out into the ocean. And we were on the way back, and there was a massive wind, kind of like a freak weather storm happened, and just the 2 of us were like paddling there together, trying to get back to the water. And I just remember feeling like even though it was hard, like we were in total flow. We were doing it together. But we were also in this beautiful place and an incredible culture. And I really felt like I was exhausted, but in the right kind of way. So it was just one of those moments where I felt like time stood still. So for me, that was a peak experience in my life, but you might hear a couple of different values in that. So for example, there's obviously like connection, right? So connection with my friend is really important. So for me, being in relationship is a huge value, doing that with somebody. Another value, so I really value adventure. It was kind of a scary situation, but as I said, one of my values is challenge. So that felt like I was taking on a challenge. And kind of working to my max, like being the best, kind of making sure I was getting everything I needed. I was exhausted, but I also wanted to push through. So that perseverance might be a challenge that you hear from me. So that would be what somebody else might listen to. So after that person shares their peak experience, you can suggest the values you perceive. So there aren't any wrong answers. So maybe if someone is like, "Oh, I think one of your values is accountability," through that, you could be like, "Cool, interesting, jot it down, maybe think about that for a little while." So there's no right or wrong, but just something that you maybe might not resonate with. And that's the goal of this, that someone might actually hear values that are true for you, but that you wouldn't think of in the first place. So we're going to go into our breakout rooms now, and we're going to have about 15 minutes in these breakout rooms. So sometime. So if you don't have one peak experience, but you have a few, feel free to share those. And so this way, each person, gets a few minutes to share, and then a few minutes to respond to the values that people hear. So feel free to introduce yourselves and get into the breakout rooms. See you later. I'd love to hear kind of how that went for you. So, what themes emerged? What values did someone notice that maybe you hadn't thought of? And any other key takeaways? I know it's a pretty simple exercise, but sometimes it's nice just to get a little bit of time to think about ourselves. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anybody can just unmute themselves whenever they'd like. Or even if you feel more comfortable writing in the chat, go for it. But it looks like Josh, you're unmuted, so I'm just curious. Yeah, what happened for you guys?
Yeah, sure. We were talking about community and belonging. We were both talking about we both Eamon and I like to travel. So we were speaking about our experiences being in other countries that weren't our own and how we felt a sense of belonging, community, responsibility, humility in the sense that, being in these places where they're not your own and then you feel accepted and included and you don't have to earn it. It's not like you have to be a family member or friend or you have to have a certain status. You're just you and they're kind of welcoming you and making you feel part of what they know as community and what they have their value system. And
Mm.
that's something very special, I think. And yeah, anyways, those were kind of things that we were discussing and themes that emerged in ours.
Yeah, and quite some synchronicity. Both of you had a lot of similar stuff, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Um, okay. So I know we are kind of running a little bit early with time, so I don't have loads of other things, but we want to just move into kind of looking at our career goals. So since we're in a small group today, I think we can do this all together. And so I'd just like you to think about kind of what value is most unfulfilled in your career. Or if it's not a value that's unfulfilled, what value might be your superpower? So, for example, I have a client whose value is efficiency. She loves when things are efficient, and if they're not, she gets pretty unfulfilled and upset. She doesn't like when there's waste. So, when she's finding herself like in a corporate mess, she feels very unfulfilled. However, it's also her superpower, and so she can help apply efficiency to um, and to those systems. So when you're thinking about your career, I want you to consider all of your different career moments. So whether that might be, getting a new job or up leveling where you are or looking for a promotion, even dealing with a new relationship or kind of developing your own leadership style, thinking about kind of what values just aren't showing up, or what value do you want to bring more of. So taking a second to just consider those things. And I wanted to kind of give a couple of examples, if you're thinking about, where to look at values, because we just talked about maybe some life events, maybe that were not related to work, and how you might relate them then to your career. So one example, for example, is challenge. So if challenge is a value for me, if the role that I'm in is really cushy, I might want to look for where I can get more challenge. And challenge might look different for me than it does for, say, like Josh or Amber or Anas, right? So it might just be that challenge, is that I want to be learning. And I might ask my manager, where in the company can I learn more, or what can I do outside of my career to get more learning? Or for example, if one of your values is family and you're in a crazy job that's got you working, 60 hours a week and you don't have time to see family or friends, how could you shift that? What career might work for you? So, again, since we're a small group, then I'd love to hear from you. So, we're going to create one actionable step, that you'll do to align your career path with your values. So that could be anything. And so, what I'd love for us to do is we'll just kind of go down, since there's three of us left now, and talk about kind of what your top values were. Where is a value you either are feeling like isn't being honored or that you want to bring more of? And then we'll kind of brainstorm one step to do. So, Anas, can I call on you and ask you to share those things?
Yes, for sure. But would you please ask the question in different way again?
Yeah. So, if you can tell us as a group your top values, and then a value that isn't coming out in your career. So something that you
Mm,
want to either bring more of, or something that you feel like is happening that's not aligned with your values in your career. And then we'll come up with one possible step that you could do to align your career path with your values more.
yeah, yeah. Okay, crystal clear now. So I think there is it is this value. It's in my career, in my workplace, but
Mm,
maybe it's not in the same way I'm expecting or I am looking for. So authenticity and genuine as a
mm,
human is not there. Being apart from business, working in the corporate, still at certain point you cannot present yourself, what is totally understood. But sometimes you need to present the company or the corporate value, and
mm.
when you stuck between your value and their value, here is the challenge. So I believe some of more clarity about what that mean for me and what that mean for the company will not make any conflict between me and the leadership, if that was crystal clear in the beginning, because both of us we share the same value, but the way how we present it, how we act towards it, it's totally different. So
Mm.
here the expectation or the way what I expect from the mission of the corporate will be aligned with me. However, is that not true? So I think this is one of the most important thing is came to my mind, and this is where I struggle. It's not only
Yeah.
with one employer; it is with different employer, and I mentioned this not with the negative tune or blaming tune, just to try to find where we can align And
Yeah.
when we are not aligned, so what is the exit strategy for me?
So tell me just a little bit. We'll take a couple of minutes before we have other folks come in. Like what would be like one way of feeling authentic when you're able to be authentic? How would you know that you're able to be authentic?
Uh, the easiest part when you go and to be part from a sales team. I am not a salesperson, but
Hmm.
I assist sales team part from my job as a product manager. So be authentic. Tell them what you are looking for. We cannot promise, and this is our strategy. This is our mission. Not to try to be in gray area that you don't say
Okay.
yes or no. So this is something, especially when the other person or other party, they trust you a lot and they count on you. This is, you feel very very
Okay. So trust and honesty is important here from what I'm hearing. It's not just on authenticity, but there's like a sense of that other people can trust you and that you're being honest with them. Is that right?
yeah, for sure this is across those value. But yeah, I'm saying it from my perspective. You need to be crystal clear with the other, and this is how it is, so take it or
Mm,
leave it.
mm.
Especially part from my business, we are in the healthcare sector, so it is the side effect and impact if you deliver something not they expected just for a few of millions dollars for the corporate. The impact on the patient is too high.
Sure. Well, definitely we can't solve all of those things. That would be a longer conversation. But I'm just curious if Amber or Josh have any ideas in one way that you might be able to get a little bit more authenticity or honesty or trust, whatever those pieces are, kind of into your daily work life. Because I know there sounds like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So any ideas from the group? Okay, no real ideas. Well, Anath, I'm just wondering if you could actually like take a minute, not like that you're going to solve the problem, to um, come up with kind of maybe, the areas where you're finding like the most conflict, right? And that you mentioned with leadership, they have a different way of going through what they want. Like your goal is the same, but the how is different. And so I'm wondering if you could list kind of how that actually shows up, like actually coming up with specific situations where the goal is supposed to be the same, but the how is different. And, coming up with maybe five of those situations and thinking about how you would message that to leadership to try to get more alignment. Coming up with the problem is like, hey, I know we have this shared goal, but I'm seeing that these things are really different, and asking them for where you think you could get more aligned. So that's just one idea. You don't have to do it, but you could commit to it or not. So I'm just curious, what would you be willing to do that? You can give me a
For
yes, a no,
sure, for
or a
sure.
counter
Yeah,
offer.
sure.
Yeah,
1 minute will not be enough to discuss more, but yeah, I
of
consider it
course.
already, and I came with that approach. And the challenge here, the other party, if they are flexible enough to be active listening and see the other perspective with the how the other person they think about it.
Right.
And also every time when you get more in seniority level, those discussion will not be an easy discussion.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I feel every time you grow with the or you jump with the ladder in the corporate level, those value from, again, this is my opinion, maybe I'm mistaken, this value
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
consider the other leadership. You need to compromise on them more and more because you need to get into the business. So we we shift a little bit from what we believe in order what we need to do, and this is the hard.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It is. And what it seems like is it comes down to a communication challenge because I know as you go up in corporate, right, it can be more and more difficult to get what you want because there's can feel like there's sometimes competing business goals. But that at this point too, I think it does still, you're always dealing with people, right? And so if you can find the commonality in that you know that you both this person who's in leadership and you really value just being authentic in general as a person, not even the company values, maybe there's a way you can connect with them there so that they can really hear you and receive the feedback a little bit better. So that's just the area. I won't go on too long because I want to give folks another other time. But thinking about, again, like when you're working with this, it's not just kind of the level set, but it's really the person that you're working with too. So thinking about kind of what they might value as well. Great. Okay, so Amber, what's one actionable step that you'd think about to do to align your career path with your values? What's going on? What value is not yet as expressed as it could be?
Um, I think for me, I was kind of on the fence about it, but I think a level of achievement is
Mm,
twofold for me there. I kind of find myself feeling like there's a level of achievement in working with a successful notable company or with individuals who have like a long-standing history of success in general. But
okay.
achievement for myself, I guess, in terms of like a personal success, apart from like just, going and going and achieving some personal goal, that's something that I think is missing in my career. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I do find myself kind of on the back, burner on the sidelines, kind of cheering someone on, which is fine. Most of the time I guess I kind of put myself in that position, but I think that that is something that I am missing in my career. And
Definitely.
I think that that's something that I'll have to find a level of responsibility within, whatever means possible to be able to bring that to fruition. I'm not exactly sure. So yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering because like, understanding success, it's a big thing to unpack, right? Like what that looks like is a little bit I don't know, it's fraught with like what people should believe is successful, what you think is successful, and then what it tangibly looks like. So kind of do you have a clear idea around success or what would success in a small way look like for you?
In a small way, I mean, it could be a shared success. It could be like,
Okay.
collaborating with the team. It doesn't have to be like I'm winning a lawsuit or something of that sort. I've worked with attorneys, so that's a shared success in itself. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to having those wins of, you know, providing the deliverables, not just on time, not just,
Hmm.
on client billable hours, but to be able to actually like have a project or a process or something of that seems tangible in some way that's being
Okay.
delivered. And I think that that's what I'm looking for. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So like having something that's specifically that you're owning. That's
It
your
could be in collaboration, of course, but yeah.
yeah, in collaboration, but that is like that you're leading in some ways. There's an aspect of leadership here.
Mm. It doesn't have to be a leadership aspect, but it could be a shared,
Okay.
it could be
Fair.
a shared success.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cheers to six.
just
Okay.
some form of achievement in that. So yeah.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Cool. All right, Josh, what about you? Thinking about your values in relationship to your career.
Yeah, I think for me, like values, like principles and that and in my core are really important. Um, I've been at some pretty like high, how do you say it? Like companies that like have great, good reputation and people,
Reputable, yeah. Yeah.
admire them, right? But then you work there and it's a little different story. And you know, you kind of see it on paper, I guess, of like what the expectation is of this company, because you go into the stores and you're like, wow, this is cool. Everybody's so friendly and they're lovely, and you get the great product, and you know, but then you work there and it's a wholly totally different experience, and it kind of burns you a bit. And so when you have these principles and these things in mind of like how people should treat each other and like the level of respect and like, you know, how being transparent and open and, you know, constructive, and then you don't see it, yeah, it's a trap and it hurts. And
Mm,
and you know, when you're a person of principle and you want to follow those rules, I guess in a way, or those principles, and then others aren't, you kind of feel like betrayed a little bit because you've come in
sure.
there thinking, okay, like these people who are in these places of leadership are going to treat me that way, but then they don't. And then they kind of stab you in the back in a bit. It's hard, to be honest. It's
Definitely.
and it's hard to get over. You know, and I've left those places, you know, in the past because they've been, you know, toxic. And but you go in there with like, you know, thinking it's going to get better, and then it doesn't, and it only ggets worse. And you know, and that's kind of the corporate, you know, mindset in a way. I've worked in nonprofit, and it can have a little bit of the same too, but corporate, you know, especially in e-commerce, which I've worked in recently, has had a
Okay.
lot of that. And you know, there it comes with the territory, of course. You know, you got to meet the revenue targets, and you know, there's someone at the top pushing things. But yeah, I think for me, like being someone that wants to stick to those principles, that you should do that first and stick to your belief system, as opposed to bending and taking cutting corners and then, you know, people getting hurt and pushed down the way, because I think eventually the customer feels that as well, right? Regardless of like if there's
Definitely.
initial short-term success, long-term success will not be there. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Is there one value that you are like absolutely not, I'm never gonna budge on this ever again?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, yeah, the one value I would not budge on again would be, I think treating people with respect, like mutual
Mm,
respect. You
yeah.
know, and I think that should come in it's complex. You can unpack that a lot, right? But like I think it comes down to, you know, giving them at least the opportunity to have conversations. Like, you know, I've worked as a project manager, and you know, I've had to work with my team members, and you have to sometimes take people, you know, have a conversation with them about certain things, but you do it in a constructive and meaningful way that has purpose, right? But then others don't do that, right? And I think you have to give them that. Everybody have the same level of respect, whatever position you're in, and
Hmm.
whoever, you know, you're speaking with. There should always be that regard, right? Because that's so important for us as humans, right? In our relationships, in our friendships, and of course in our workplaces, of course, as well, right? And so for me, respect, RESPCT, right, is such
Yeah, yeah.
critical aspect. And I think it's lost a lot now, especially online work. Like I'm
Mm,
a bit old school, and I started with, you know, working in person, and it was just how we did it, right? We worked at the client sites. We'd fly, you know, to you know, somewhere in the middle of the US, Midwest or whatever, and our teams would go in, and we had that understanding of each other. We worked together, and we're in person. So there was just like a different level of respect. But now remote work, I got to say, has changed that a little bit. I don't know if others feel
mm,
that, but it makes it a little more challenging, right? Because I think you haven't met
yeah.
that person in person too. And so people kind of just see you as a face on the screen, and they're like, well, I can do or say whatever I want, right? If they don't have that level of respect, right? For everybody. And I've seen that happen again and again and again in the last couple of years, especially in e-commerce. But you know, and so I'd say that's a principle and a aspect that I really value and admire, and I try to stick to that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah. And then maybe, so one thing to noodle on for you sounds like how can you like amp the level of respect up or demand that respect from others? Like, kind of be clear in that the folks that you're working with, that you want to create that mutuality and what that really looks like, and trying to communicate with them around like expectations, and that it's actually of benefit to them, because you would be giving and receiving like the respect that you want and deserve. So maybe there's something there to think about as well.
Totally. Great.
Yeah, great. Cool. All right. Well, that's pretty much it for values. And I know we have about 5 minutes left. So this is just a little bit of time for Q&A, or to ask me anything as a coach. I'd love to hear what questions you have. And yeah, or just, even if you wanted to comment on anything that someone else in the group has said today, I'd love to hear more from you guys. Yeah, Anas, go for it.
Thank you, Tracy. Actually, it's a wonderful time spending with you, and I learned a lot. And nothing to ask. Just I want to shout out. Thank you for your time, and
Oh,
looking to connect with you for further collaboration in the future. I have something I would
great.
like to share with you, so I add you on the LinkedIn.
Sure.
I would like to
Okay.
have coffee time and discuss further. But for sure, you add a lot of v- value for me today, and refresh our mind also as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Anas. I really appreciate that. Yeah, great. Well, thank you. Yeah, and so just to kind of, I guess, back onto that, if you want to work together or learn more about me, so I offer coaching through Leland, and I do a lot of other stuff through my own company, which is called Catalyst Collab. But so you can find out, I guess, about what I'm doing there. But for coaching through Leland would be the best place to go. So there's a QR code here, and for those of you that attended today, there's 20% off all of the packages for the new year going in. So primarily, I work on career leadership and executive coaching levels. So ideally, this is you're in your career, you want to make a change, whether that might be internally or externally, or you're trying to develop yourself as a leader, or as leader feels like a little bit hard to grab onto. Like that, it just means really like that you're looking for some self-development as well. So I'd love to connect with all of you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, and we'll leave it there. So thank you so much.